Welcome to the Music and Memories Podcast with your host, Vince Moreno.
All right, folks, welcome to another episode of Music and Memories with your host, me, Vince Moreno. Hey, just want to remind you guys to go share this thing. As always, if you can, share it on your social medias or just copy the link and text it to a friend, any kind of stuff like that. And today, I got a pretty exciting guest today, one of my old buddies here. I can't do it as good as you.
Right, is this the time when I'm supposed to do that? Okay.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Banjo Band Clark.
Yeah.
That's your trademark, man. How'd you come up with that?
I have a lot of things that are trademarks that were accidents to start with,
Yeah.
And honestly, if I would have known that I would still be doing them years later when I did it the first time, I probably wouldn't have done them. but
hindsight, man.
You know what? It's whatever it takes.
I got a funny story about that, actually, that I'm going through right now about hindsight, that I'll just share with you really quickly. But so I cut an album in like 1998, right?
Yeah.
I sounded like I'm 13 on it,
Right.
Or no, it was before 98, I think. Anyway, I sound like I'm 13. The songs are, they sound like I wrote them at 13, and just production was terrible and all that stuff. And so recently I had sent a bunch of the new CDs that I've just done to my mom. And so 2 days ago, she called me and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I got the radio station in our hometown to play your song, this one." I said, "Which one?" And she told me which one. I went, "That's not even on CD. What are you talking about?" "Well, I gave him the one." I said, "That's from 98. Why would you do that? Oh my God." So I'm like, there's a reason and a rhythm to all this stuff,
Yeah.
There's a method. But anyway, to get back to my guest, normally I promote, like, we talk about your promotion stuff at the end of the podcast normally, but I want to introduce everybody to you as let's do it right off the bat here, because you've built up an empire, man. It's really, really cool. And you've built up a thing as Banjo Ben Clark, teaching people how to play all kinds of instruments, because you are multi-freaking talented, man. I mean,
well,
you play a lot of things.
I tell people, man, you don't, to make a living in Nashville, and I'm talking to the guy here with you that has done this as good or better than anybody I've seen.
Oh, wow.
And that's to make yourself marketable. It's
True.
like, if you want to work in this town, you've got to try to make yourself as proficient at as many things as you can. Mm-hmm. And that was always my goal coming into town. And that wasn't my wisdom. That was told to me by old road dogs, and
Right.
I went to a little music college for a while, and the instructors, they had all been in the music business, and they're like, "Look, now's the time before you go. Learn how to sing harmony if you don't know how to sing harmony. Pick up another instrument. You've never held a mandolin? Pick up a mandolin and learn how to go ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding.
Yeah.
Because one day, somebody in Nashville might say, 'Do you know how to go ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding?' And you'd be like, 'Yes, I do,' right?"
And that's most parts on the mandolin on records, right?
That's all there is. That's all there is.
Mastered it.
Yeah, so I worked really hard for coming here to just try to build as big a foundation as I could, because here's one thing I knew. There's a lot that I didn't know, but one thing I knew is that I would never be the best at anything in Nashville.
Amen. I always thought that too. I mean, of me,
Yeah,
not of you. I never thought you were the best either, but
it's not going to hurt my feelings. And of course, that was reinforced and validated when I came here. Any little dive that you drop into just has, these world-class musicians. And then I realized, gosh, my waiter and my waitress at Olive Garden is probably a better picker than I am.
or singer or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm not going to be the best at one thing, maybe I can be as good as I can be at a lot of things and try to offer someone a lot of bang for their buck. Mm-hmm. And that included, I drove trucks, in college, got my CDL. So I brought that to the table.
Yeah.
I would hustle with merch. I would do everything I could back in the day to get jobs. And
that's right.
And I would get hired not because I was the best, but because I was valuable, for what they paid me. I worked like a dog.
It's so true. And like you were just mentioning how, and people hear this, that aren't in the music business, they hear this all the time. Like, "Oh, well, you could go to Nashville and, the pizza delivery guy is probably a better singer than you are." They don't realize how true that is. Yeah. They really don't. They think it's some cliched thing that we say, but it's literally true. When I first started coming to town, I don't know, 95, something like that, I would just come visit here. My sister worked for American Airlines, so I could fly on a pass, and I would come and be enamored by everybody here, and I would just walk down the street going, I think I'll stay in Tucson for a while. Because, I mean, it was very, it's a reality check, you know. And you go, who's that guy? I'm like, oh, he's just so-and-so from Illinois. And he
doesn't have a job.
Yeah. And I'm like, holy cow, that guy. And then, like, when I first came, there's Johnny Highland's playing downtown. He's legally blind. Jim Imaniak's missing a finger. And these guys are just ripping stuff up. I'm like, oh, I got all my limbs, and I can see just fine. I can't play worth a half worth of damn as these guys can.
And I get into that from your question about teaching people to play all kinds of instruments because, as I prepared and as I tried to make myself as marketable as I could, I tried to learn as many instruments as I could. And I had to do that as an adult. I grew up playing piano, and that was a great foundation. But I didn't pick up guitar and banjo, mandolin, dobro, and fiddle, and all these other things until I was in college.
That's crazy.
So, as I began to think about the instructional thing, I was thinking about it from a different perspective than maybe most people, because most of your pros did start at an early age, and
focus just on one instrument, right?
Or they focus just on one instrument. But I found that whenever I began to teach people, I was effective because I remembered what it was like to struggle and what it was like to learn.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of my friends, guys playing for Skaggs and they're just prodigies.
Yeah.
They've been ripping the strings off of stuff since they were 5 or 6. And you're like, well, how do you do that one thing? And they're like, I don't know.
I don't really know. Yeah.
I don't remember my fingers hurting. I don't remember any of those things. And but I do. And I'm not as good at players as those guys, but I do have better memories of what it was like to begin to play. And that is really my audience. It's people who want to start getting into playing and who want to be better. I have advanced stuff too, but I found I have a real passion for people who have just always wanted to learn how to play, and they need somebody that can relate to them.
That is such a great strategy, or I don't know if you call it strategy.
I stumbled into it. I'm not that smart.
Well, no, I mean it's cool because I remember when I was learning guitar, nobody was there to say, hey, your fingers are really gonna hurt for a while if you start on acoustic, and then I had the Roy Clark jumbo book of chords or whatever it was, and I didn't take lessons until I got a little bit older, and I had already gone through that part. Nobody ever showed me how to do a truss rod adjustment. Nobody ever said, this is how you change your string. Nobody ever, and there wasn't YouTube back then.
That's right.
And now, honestly, YouTube could be just as hurtful as helpful on some, because some people,
know what kind of information.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. So that's a really cool concept that you're dealing with there on your, and that's Banjo Band. Clark.com. Okay.
Yep. BanjoBandClark.com. Again, that whole venture that I have going there, that was an accident.
Really?
Yeah. It was a complete
You never
accident.
planned like, I think I'm going to start doing online lessons?
Man, I did, but even that was an accident. And it was, you and I were talking before we started recording. We were talking about being on the road, and there's positive and there's not so positive things about that. And one of the things that I would get weary of is just the time that you have sitting around.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in places that you're not able to get out and shoot a bow or swing a golf club or
fish or
throw
do
a lure
something.
or something, right?
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I'd sit around and work on my flat picking and more of the bluegrass type stuff that I was passionate about. And then YouTube hit. This is 2006. That's about when YouTube kind of came on the horizon there.
Dang.
And I know,
that
man.
sounds so weird thinking about it that way.
It is. And so we're just getting familiar with that platform, and like, what is this even about? Is people putting up videos of you doing stuff? Like, who's
going to watch this crap?
And so I remember I had my little MacBook, and I turned it on and I played through some kind of basic bluegrass thing. I thought, this is how I do this. And I published it, not knowing what I was doing, thinking nobody's ever going to find that.
Just kind of just doing it to do it because you're bored.
And then it got a like, it got a view, and then I started getting these messages through the YouTube platforms like, that was awesome. Could you do this other song? And I'm like, well, I guess so. so it went, I remember looking at it and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting 40 views a day on these videos. I'm 40 people, and
that's even good up to today's standards, for real. I mean,
and it just kept going and going to where eventually, whenever I wanted to come off the road, and I signed a publishing deal with Sony, and even as I kind of saw the long-term trajectory of trying to make a living as a songwriter and the difficulty in that.
Right.
We can talk about that too if you want, but I thought I've got to find some other way to try to supplement it, and I'd love to do something I'm passionate about, and I love to teach. I love to teach. Let's just see if it would work. And those views just kept growing, and I threw it over on a website, and now that's 10 years ago, and that's what I've done for a full-time job since.
And it's, I see, like we're friends on Facebook anyway, and then I like your page or whatever too. So I'll still see your, stuff pop up, but then I also see like ads of it pop up, all the time. So it's like that. I mean, it's just gone crazy good, well for you, and that's awesome. So congratulations on that. And you just had a camp here at your house too, like what is it? Just banjo only?
Well, no, actually, I teach. This last camp was 4 instruments. I did banjo, guitar, mandolin, and stand-up bass.
And is it just you, or
no?
do you
I have other instructors come in.
That's too cool, man.
I've got 2 sisters that they're twins that are some of the best musicians I know.
Yes,
and
sir.
That's me talking in Nashville. I mean, they're drop dead killer pickers, man, and singers, and they're really good communicators too. So I have those girls built in. They teach banjo and mandolin, and then
they're the Purple Holes, right?
They're the Purple Holes. Purple Holes. Yeah, they have. They were busy.
Weren't we all?
Weren't we all? And then I had my store manager, who's also an incredible guitar player and teacher, Jake Stogdill. He came in and did guitar, and then we had one of my favorite guitar players ever. Bluegrasser named Kenny Smith. He dropped in for a couple of days and was a guest instructor. So yeah, man, I had 36 students here, socially distanced in my backyard, and we just had a ball.
That's amazing. Is it all focused on just bluegrass, or
it is? It sure is. We'll delve into the swing stuff in the evenings sometimes, and I'll follow the requests of the students that they're wanting to learn something in particular. But yes, it's, I prepare them. I give them 10 songs, kind of a curriculum to prepare with whenever they come here. So they come at least being familiar with 10 songs, and we have 10 common tunes that we can jam on, and I use those for instructional purposes too. We spend the mornings doing all theory and Nashville numbers and how to sing harmony and things that relate to the big group, and then we split into groups.
Wow, you're teaching a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it is, man. It's packed. It is packed, and I feed them all 2 meals a day, and then we have a big Battle of the Bands competition.
I couldn't do the camp then if it's only 2 meals. Yeah, I'll wait for the one where it's like 4 meals a day. I'll sign up for that one.
but you saw the pavilion I built when you pulled in.
Dude, your place is amazing.
Thanks, man. We've done a lot of work here, mainly for that camp experience.
I helped a little bit too. I remember I helped you with one of your walls one time.
Man. You actually inspired the whole project.
Yeah, I put a nice big hole in there in that wall with one of your keyboards, and I thought, that'd be a good place for a receptacle or some type of dimmer switch or something.
When I was repairing that drywall, I thought,
I'm blushing right now.
I thought, why not just continue on?
Let's put a pavilion and
let's just take out the entire wall.
Once you got done taping that 8-inch hole, you were like, you know what? Let's go ahead and add on to the house.
Yeah, while I've got my hands dirty.
There's a story behind that. We got to interrupt that. But when I took the gig with Tracy Lawrence, this was a few years ago now, I had all my gear on his bus, and they were like throwing all these new songs at me. And so I put up a post on Facebook, and I said, hey, does any of my pals out there have a keyboard I can just borrow just to practice on at home? Because I had sold my piano. I just kind of revamped my whole house and everything. And you reached out, and you're like, hey, man, I got my keyboard, if you need to borrow it. And I'm like, oh, that'd be awesome. I'll come by and get it, And so you had it up in your studio upstairs, and I'm walking down with this keyboard and crank, and I just turned the corner on the one part, and I remember just putting the corner of the keyboard right through your wall. And
listen, that's not the whole story. I'm going to bail you out a little bit. Number one, my stairs are a bit uneven, and you slipped.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah, you slipped. And then number two. Yeah, you did.
I don't remember that part.
You went off the front of the step. And then number two, I should have had a Nord or something, that weighs like 17 pounds. Instead, I gave you a Kurzweil PC88. It literally weighs 88 pounds.
Oh my God, I'm coughing over here. It's not COVID, I swear. I already done that. Been there, done that. So I don't remember slipping, but I'll take that. I'll take that. I just remember feeling awful. I'm like, here I am borrowing this guy's keyboard. And then I just put a freaking hole in his wall of his amazing house.
That's when I knew we were good friends.
No, that's what I knew. It's like, this guy didn't just knock me out for putting a hole in his wall. Good Lord.
Man. So the camps they've gone good. I've had those here for 2 years in a row now, and I've started doing some destination camps. So I've got a one day coming up in Florida, and I'm doing one next summer in Montana.
That's amazing.
Plan to do them in Europe the following year.
Now, you don't have any in Texas that you're doing? Because isn't that where you're from, right?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Eventually I am. I'm actually working on getting our farm where I grew up on there set up more as a destination.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
And
cool.
down there, there's no laws in Texas. Did you know that?
Well, that's only the ones you make up, son.
So man, we're gonna be able to have some fun. I was gonna tie in some really fun shooting activities.
I was gonna say you could do some archery stuff. And, my aunt used to do that during the. I think it was in the beginning of fall in Arizona. They had a big pecan orchard, and I want to say it was fall, might have been spring, but anyway, everything they had killed during the prior year. Yeah. They would have like a whole weekend, and everybody drive their campers out there or whatever. We'd drive out there, because out in the outskirts of Wilcox, Arizona, where I'm from, and my uncle would dig a huge pit, and they'd throw everything on one big thing. They'd lower it in with the front end of the tractor, and so we'd have the bonfire first one night, and mesquite shooting all day one day, riding 4-wheelers, and just it's just like a family reunion type of thing. So I mean, that would be fun to reenact something like that for your camp. But what are the age groups of your? I mean, you got all kinds of.
Sure, man. I had some teenagers come, and then I had folks in their 80s.
Wow.
And from all over the world. I mean, I had some dude from Africa here.
No
I had
way.
A German, Canadians, Alaskans, and they've come from over 40 different states over the couple of years. So, what I've found is we're really blessed, Vince, in that, we get to be around people that play music.
Yeah.
And we can kind of get used to that and get deaf to that a little bit. But there are so many music lovers all around the world, and they don't know anybody that plays personally.
Right.
And so they get passionate about these types of things, especially if they live in a region where there's no bluegrass or acoustic music.
Sure. Or just a lot of talented people like you.
Yeah, exactly. And so then it's
or at that caliber,
it's worth it to them to go somewhere and be able to soak that up. Just be in that culture. Listening to
it almost like kind of like a small, type of way fanfare, because they got the admiration there already too, but then they want to learn something. So it's
absolutely. And I get to have it at my home, and they get to hang out with my family and my chickens. Crap in the guitar case. And
I think I ran over one of those before. I couldn't put a hole in your wall, so I might as well kill a chicken while I'm here.
Yeah, don't worry about this. I'll take care of it after you leave.
So going back to that keyboard, when I first met you, I was on the road with Neil McCoy, and this was probably like 2005 or 6. And I first met you were playing. It was funny because that's when I met the whole Craig Morgan crew, and you were playing keys with Craig at the time, and the guys in the band kept going, "Oh yeah, banjo band." I'm like, where the hell's the banjo guy, And they're like, "Oh, he's playing keyboards." And I'm like, "What?" What? And then they had Lucky on fiddle, It's like all these nicknames, but anyway, you were playing keys with Craig, and I thought, wow, this dude's smoking. I'm like, I need to move back home. I really, really was impressed with your keyboard playing, and because you guys used to do like this really big gospel intro to That's What I Love About Sunday.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could never play that because I just didn't grow up playing that stuff.
Right.
I'm just kind of along the Pig Robbins type of style the way I play. So I was just like, wow, this dude's good, man. And then like you left there, and I think the next time I saw you on the road, you were playing banjo and mandolin. You were doing utility stuff for Taylor Swift.
Yeah, for Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why Craig did hire me is piano was the main deal, but then he had Redneck Yacht Club, which is a big number one for him. It has that banjo.
Oh yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Not the mandolin, ding 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 ding.
Right. Yeah, and then he did have a lot of mandolin and stuff too. Phil Billy had produced that stuff, and Phil O'Donnell is just has excellent taste in sounds.
Oh yeah,
and he's got some killer production on Craig's stuff, and so it's had dobro, mandolin, and banjo sprinkled throughout, and it was really my kind of gig.
It really was. It really, yeah.
Yeah, I really, that was a fun gig, and I wasn't there too terribly long. Less than a year.
I was gonna say it was about 8 months or
when Taylor called, and and I didn't have the foresight or the wisdom then either to have any idea what she was going to do. I was reluctant.
Right, because she was like an emerging artist, and you're like
16 with her first single, and I'll tell you what. Besides the Craig gig,
was she that young? I forgot about that.
And she had just turned 16. And no offense to the artists that I've played for, but I think, except for Craig and maybe Lila McCann, the other artists that I played for, I would hear one of their songs on the radio, and I remember doing this 3 times, and I would stop, pause it or turn the radio off and look at my wife and be like, there is no way in hell I would ever play for that artist. And I swear I was on the bus with them like the next week. That's just what it worked. And Hannah would just laugh at me, and be like, that's what you get. And Taylor had that first single out, Tim McGraw.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling into our little house, over there, North Nashville, and turning it off, and I'll be like, what kind of song
what
is like
crap is
a
this?
15-year-old singing about some 40-year-old that wears skinny jeans? And
this is also coming from the resentment as a songwriter too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you're like,
Exactly.
what? I can write better than that in my sleep. That's another segment.
Yeah. So then I get the call. I get the call from the band leader there, who was the drummer for a band that I was in Josh Grayson's band, which is another one of those artists I swore I'd never play for.
Let's throw some more under the bus. Let's throw some more under the bus. We're airing it all out, ladies and gentlemen.
It's funny who you'll play for when they pay you.
When they call you, yeah.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, sure, yeah. I'd love to learn those 3 songs and then the other 10 cover songs you're going to do.
What an opportunity. And so
That's all on the resume.
when Al ran that gig past me, I was like, Al. I was like, man, come and play for 15, 16. Her mom's on the bus. What's
going on?
Tim McGraw,
Yeah.
And he says, well, I've got one more piece of information that could interest you. I said, what's that? And he said, we just got the opening gig for the George Strait tour next year. This is in December. And he knew I was a Texan.
Yeah.
And man,
who don't like George Strait anyway?
Yeah. But, and I said, well, who else is on it? He said, Ronnie Millsap. And I was like,
And you're like, hook, line, and sinker.
And I'd been in town for a few years, and I'd played for, Craig and all kinds of people and done these theater and small amphitheater, gigs. But I myself had never been on the big tour.
Like a stadium tour.
Yeah, man. Stadium tour, like literally playing NBA and NFL stadiums and catering rig coming with you. So that was an experience that I was dying.
You'd almost have to just say yes for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Experience.
And then plus I get to do, I think it was 50 dates, might have been a few more, with one of my favorite artists ever, Ronnie Millsap.
Yeah.
And then also with George. And I knew some of those guys through proxy, some of his band guys. I thought, man, so that's why I took the gig. And it ended up being a really good decision, even though I'm not a fan of her music.
Right.
A couple things about her, we can talk about that however much you want, but first of all, she was the smartest person I've ever worked for or worked around.
Wow.
And looking back now on my career and what I've done for a living, I have to humbly say that I got a bachelor's degree in marketing from Taylor Swift.
Really?
On that bus, man. I didn't even realize that I was learning at the time, but I was.
Yeah.
And she didn't realize that she was teaching. I don't think she was trying to.
She probably wouldn't. Yeah, she was just doing her thing. Yeah.
But it wasn't just her. It was her manager too, and her dad, that are all brilliant people. And so I'm thankful for that. That was a piece of the puzzle the Lord played that I didn't realize what was happening at the time.
Right.
And then the second thing was she took care of her people unlike any other artist that I've ever heard of. Now, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was there, from the very beginning, put us on salary, put us on weekly minimums, gigs, or a brand new artist doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
And just...
Unless they knew something you didn't. Unless they knew she's going to be huge.
Yeah, exactly. And I played for artists that whenever you play the Grand Ole Opry, they don't compensate you otherwise because you're getting Opry pay.
Right,
and that's and that's kind of standard. Well, I'm just saying, to use that as an example, Taylor didn't care. She didn't care if you were getting paid TV money or radio money.
She's still going to pay you for working for her.
She's going to pay you a full gig for that. And I'm like,
that is
what?
unheard of. Yeah,
it's unheard of. And we were out with long time artists and long time bands that weren't making as much as we were. As a brand new band, and a big reason is a lot of people can't afford it. She had money behind her,
right?
But the other reason is they were very generous. They were just very generous people. And her dad was running the show at that time, and he believed in taking care of people that were loyal.
I just always remember you speaking really highly of that organization.
Sure, man.
Even when you were there, especially, but then even when you left, you said it's just a decision that
It was, and I saw changes coming, and changes have come.
And then they kind of eliminated your instruments in her music anyway.
They did, and and I wonder if I would have stayed there, if I would have even kept a job. I don't know that.
Yeah.
But. Things definitely changed there, and I think
what were you there, like 2 years?
I was there almost 3.
Okay.
Yeah. But what's interesting, even in that short period of time, or well, depends on how you look at it. In Nashville, that can be a long period of time too. But I got more mileage in those almost 3 years than I think 10 years of other gigs that I could have had.
Yeah.
I mean, I started with her as a brand new artist, literally with one single out.
That's probably key, because most of the artists like I've played with
are starting to plateau, and
right, they've already been in they've been in their prime, and they're either coasting back down or whatever, and you don't see that a fire in them. You don't see that we need to do this, or we're going to do this here. Right. We're going to do that. This is a change we got to make. Or you don't see that. It's just like, let's go do the show.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm going to sing all my hits and we're good. We're going to go home. So that's an experience I've never got to have, because all the artists I've ever worked for, I came in on the tail end of their, being on their prime. So that's probably has a lot to do with like the learning that you did, because God, I would have, given anything for that to learn like that.
Yeah. So, it started with her as her first single just come out. When I quit, she had outsold U2 that year as the number one selling artist in the world in 3 years.
Yeah.
And so even when you get a young artist, you're in for the ride, and they have a very successful career, that's one thing. But it's once every 30 years that a Taylor Swift comes along. That's true, and you get to experience that.
That's crazy,
You've got Garth, Shania, and Taylor. Really, when you look back over the last few decades.
Yeah.
In that genre. So we went from, she and I, just her and I, and maybe her mom or a record label rep in a rented van driving around doing, radio shows.
Yeah.
Hitting 3 radio stations a day in Philadelphia, to jumping in her Falcon and flying internationally, or going and doing the Houston Livestock Show and rodeo and being back in my bed the same night of the show.
That's nuts, man.
Just crazy the trajectory
that
I
fast.
But
I guess normally that kind of fame usually they don't say like, oh, he's been at it for 10 years and now bam, he's a superstar. I mean, so I guess it does normally happen that fast.
And she had put in a lot of years before that. Even at 15, she'd been knocking on doors on Music Row for 4 or 5 years, and people don't talk about that either. All that to say is, again, I'm not a fan of her music, and I have some funny stories there too. I never learned the words to her songs, and I got busted on that a couple times. But
singing a harmony line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got asked to sing a harmony line one time on a song that I didn't sing, and I was like, "What are the words?"
That's amazing.
It was like a hit, But anyway, I don't have to like someone's music to respect what they've done in the industry and what they've done as a innovator,
or even to do the job,
marketer.
To do the gig. You don't have to be a fan of the music.
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you are.
It's even better if you are.
I mean, and that was the dream coming here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my dream coming here, Vince. My dream coming here. I grew up on a farm in East Texas, right? And I was into bluegrass in college, and I thought that Nashville was full of guys like me that loved Conway and loved George Jones, and and that dressed and hung out at places the way that I did, and man, I was going to be on the bus full of 12 of my future best friends, and I was going to get to go out and play trade-off solos with steel guitar every night, and that's what I imagined.
In a perfect world. You know what? There is those people. It just happened to be we were born in the wrong era, because I was the same way. Like I get dressed up for a gig, Now it's like guys are like, well, got my ball cap on. Let's go do the opera. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. And I learned that Nashville was not that way when I moved here, and I also had my mind expanded. Because I was from a small town and pretty narrow-minded, and I learned that I could have fun and make great music with people that didn't look or talk like me too.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
And so that was a good lesson as well.
Yeah, like don't judge the book by its cover.
Yeah, sure, man.
I'm a living proof of that.
Yeah,
because I walk in somewhere like, hey, you La Bamba? I'm like, no, Johnny Paycheck, man. What are you talking about? Okay. So don't judge us, but no, it's true though. It's like you see some guys and like especially today, you see them, they look like homeless people living in Austin or something. They got long hair and this and that, and then they break out with some old George Jones song. You're like, oh, I did not expect that from you, But it's that, I guess that's part of the magic of loving that like the music bringing out of, being brought out of people different. Like you saying, like your camp, you got a guy from Africa coming over here.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Well, I don't know if I've ever explicitly in my mind made the connection between what I've learned from Taylor and what I see reflected in my business model. Maybe I need to write a paper on this or something.
You really should, because that probably did play a huge role in what you're doing now, dude, because you're like a self-made thousandaire.
Kind of. But one thing I remember, a very specific instance on the bus with Taylor. We were down in Baton Rouge, and it was a little radio listener appreciation show, which can be a pain.
Yeah,
they don't.
Most
pay.
artists hate it. Yeah,
they don't pay. They're awkward. They're usually hot, and not a green room. You're coming off out from under a tarp or whatever.
Right.
And then you have to not only play, but then
impress them,
and spend time, with these folks. And it's not that you don't want to spend time with people. It's just, if you do that 300 days a year, it's rough, wearisome, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, as the band guys and gals, we didn't really have to worry about that, but I just know from the artist perspective,
right?
How that can be. And so this particular day, it started raining, man. The bottom just dropped out of it. And we were up front, and it was just an acoustic gig, and it was me. There's 3 people: me, Taylor, and her manager. And it was raining, and we looked out, and some people had cleared away, but there was still just this core of people holding signs, sopping wet outside the bus, like, "We love you, Taylor." She had one single out,
Wow.
And I said, "Taylor, look at that. I mean, we're just blown away,
Yeah.
And she was too. And she was like, and I think they called the gig, actually.
Yeah.
And so the bus driver was on there. We're ready to roll. And I remember looking at Taylor and saying, "You should go out there and meet him." And she goes, she says something to the effect of, "I'm going to go out there and essentially, thank them for coming to the show and spend time with them." She went out there in that rain and hugged every one of their necks and spent, I don't know, an hour or whatever. I don't think we sang a song, but when she got back on, there was a conversation between her manager, and her manager says, "Taylor, do you want to sell 1 million records?" And she says, "Well, yeah, I do." And he says, "Well, you're going to have to
do that every time.
1 million necks."
Yeah.
And that was the line: sell 1 million records, hug 1 million necks. And from there on, it's like I don't know if she changed, but she definitely had a
focus,
a focus, man. And so we started these meet and greets, which are common, but we started these meet and greets, and they were out with the George Strait tour, and she would announce from the stage, "If you want to meet me tonight, you can meet me tonight." Like, there's no special meet and greet. Like, it's line up over here. We'll get
like
it
the
done.
old school guys did it, man.
Right, exactly. And we're like in Reunion Arena or somewhere, 35,000 people, and she's saying this from the stage, and security's like, what the heck?
What are you talking about?
Right. And so eventually they started kicking us out of the venue, and we would set it up around these NBA arenas, and the line would wrap all the way around, and we'd have to coordinate with the local police force, and there would be thousands of mainly young teenage girls coming up, and every single one of them would get this personal attention from Taylor, and this, "Oh my gosh, so great to meet you," hug, sign, pictures, and every one of those, I would look at them and say, every one of those are going to buy every single record she ever puts out.
Yep.
Forever.
That's built in right there.
Yeah, and so
I remember
that's how she
that.
did it. She worked hard, dude. It wasn't given to her.
Oh, I know, and it's everybody's going to scrutinize people and for their music or whatever. They don't know the hard work that goes behind a lot of that. But I remember that time I was playing with Neil, and we were in Ohio. We were in that town where Johnny Paycheck went to prison for a while or jail or something. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we were doing a show, and Taylor was closing. And I think she just had the one single out at that point. I mean, you hadn't been there for a little while, but she wasn't the superstardom yet, And I remember when Neil said, "We're not pulling out until, Taylor gets done with her show. It's just rude, to leave, blah, blah." So, and I don't think we had anywhere to go. I think we all went bowling that night afterwards, actually. You were there too. And because you knew his daughter and all them too. Yeah. Like you grew up with them or something. Yep. So anyway, we're sitting there, and I remember when it was come time to actually pull the bus out of there was a freaking line of people blocking the bus to meet Taylor, and I thought, man, why didn't Neil do that? Whatever. But I mean, and at that time, half of them were, just whining and like, "Oh God, get these people out of here," blah, 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 from our camp. And I'm like, that girl is building her empire right there.
Yeah,
And I noticed that when I saw that line of people, I thought, holy crap, that's crazy.
You know, and to just kind of tie that story up, I guess one thing I learned there was that people want to, and I do too, they want to have experience with you, and they care about relationship.
Yeah.
And it's more than just a material transaction. If you sing this song and I'll pay my money, it's really at the end of the day, it's all about people and all about relationships.
It is.
And that's why I want to invite people into my life and at my house. And yeah, you can sit on your computer and learn a lesson from me, or you can come hang out with me, because I want to get to know you as a person, and I want to be friends with you, and I want to help you along in your journey.
It's
and
cool.
People are wanting that,
Yeah.
right? And
But it's cool for you too, because you're like,
oh, man.
you know, like, oh, I know this guy, what he wants to learn, you know. So I mean, it's got to be even more awesome for you to know the person you're teaching. I mean, because like you said, anybody can learn from anybody, or go to a music store and see, like, okay, I'm here for my next lesson. Okay, open your book. Okay, you're doing that pretty good, Timmy. Okay, see you next week.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
right. I love the relationship part of it too.
Yeah, it's the bond, I think, that, and like I get people messaging me, just like I'll go live for a thing and somebody will message me, and then I'll message them back, and you know, it might be a question that I already answered.
Yeah,
people know this about me. People know this about me.
This is one of my favorite qualities of Vince Moreno. Is
oh God, here we go.
Your replies back on Facebook, combined with the emojis, are the best. You say the things that I've always wanted to say.
Oh, that's what people tell me.
And I could never do it, but nobody gets mad at you.
Oh, they do.
Oh, okay.
Oh, they do.
Okay, when you don't care if anyone gets mad at you.
That's half of it, man. I guess. Yeah, but
so funny, dude. It's like, but what I love about it, Vince, is you're educating people. You're changing the world.
Okay. I'll go with that. I like the way you're putting this.
Yeah, man. Because
you just got hired for PR.
You are improving the average public's reading comprehension skills.
Dude, it's unbelievable the message I get.
And listening comprehension skills.
I would literally put a post up that says, just for instance, I'm going live tonight, just me and my guitar, at 7 p.m. Central on Facebook on this actual page. Put the web address, and then I'll put hashtags like, you know, with other info, and somebody will literally comment and say, when is this? How can I share it? Or they'll say, where's the guys in the band? You know, or whatever. And I'm like, oh, M&G. But
oh man!
But when I do reply to like some people, I'll just kind of laugh and go, okay, I'll just go ahead and say 7 p.m. You know, like if they'll message me, and they'll be like, but some people replied and been like, man, thank you so much. I never thought you would have actually replied back to me. You know, that's what we love about you is you actually communicate with us.
Right.
And I'm like, oh well, I mean, I want you to like me, but quit being stupid.
I know one thing.
It takes a little longer to like you if you're stupid.
Let me just tell you this. Before I comment on one of your posts, I read it about 9 times.
You know how many people tell me that? Oh, they'll text me and be like, yes, I saw your post and I looked at your website, but
yeah, I'm sorry, I've read it because I'm like, man, if I get busted by Vince, man.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I mean, it makes me laugh, but at the same time, I'll tell my wife, Holly, I said, at the end of the day, she'll come home and I'll be like, she's like, how was your day? I was like, well, I only pulled out half of my hair today. They're like, why? I'm like, well, I'm trying to tell these people to share my, you know, whatever. Yeah. And I'll tell them, you know, go to my website, vincereno.net, and you can buy my CD there. And they'll go and they'll hit the iTunes link. Well, I don't know if I did it right. Well, you didn't, because it's not a CD. But yeah, I do try to help them.
You know, people ask me, they're like, "Oh, cool, you teach lessons for a living." I said, "No, I answer emails for a living," and I do. If I didn't, you know, and at the end of the day, if I didn't enjoy corresponding with folks and helping them in all kinds of different ways, then I wouldn't be able to make a living. But yeah, it's funny.
It's fun and it's sometimes challenging. But you know, it's funny you say like I'm helping people. Maybe, but I know in one instance that I have this new fan, and she literally, when I go Facebook Live, I won't mention any names, but if she listens to this, she'll know who she is. She would literally send me a check in the mail instead of Venmo or PayPal.
Wow.
And she said, I don't trust Venmo or PayPal. I said, well, you're on Facebook, honey. It doesn't get any more untrusting than that. You know, I mean, if you've signed up for Facebook, they know everything about what you're talking about. You know, anyway, so I just said, So she would send me a check, a really good check every time. And, like 4 or 5 days later, I'd get this check and I'm like, gee, and I would message her, I send a picture of it. Thank you so much. I got your check, and so finally one day she said, she was paranoid. She's like, I sent you a check and you didn't say that you got it. Did you get it? And I said, no, I haven't got it, but the mail's really screwy right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ship a hat to somebody in Arizona and they'll get it in 2 days. And then somebody in Kentucky, it'll be like 3 weeks. It's weird. And anyway, so I just told her, I said, Venmo is just so easy that, all you have to do is just put your routing number and your bank number and you just click on it. I mean, and it's instant, and so she was real paranoid about it. I said, look, I sent her, I looked up on YouTube a good tutorial because I thought it'd be easier to watch that than have me tell her, So I sent her that YouTube link and I said, just watch this and see if you can figure it out. And if, just trust me on it, that it's safe because I use it all the time, So she did. She signed up for it, and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe I did it, And I was like, I'm so proud of you. But you can still send the checks if you want. So the first time I went live when she had signed up for Venmo, she still Venmoed me and then still sent me a check. She's like, well, you said you wanted a check, and I'm like, well, I'll take it, But I just thought it was so funny. I said, look, I'm helping people get on Venmo. So you're welcome, Venmo. But,
oh man, that's awesome.
But it's that kind of communication, like you're saying, like bonding with people, and even just replying. Like somebody will, I'm sure that you get messages like, "Hey, what kind of strings do you use?" Or what kind of pick, or what? And you sell stuff like that on your website too.
Yeah, I've got a store. We're actually we're having a lot of fun with that, and I remember too. I guess another thing I learned, man, it's like when I was starting on YouTube, I was getting these subscribers. And I thought that was the craziest thing in the world, that somebody would
like follow,
subscribe
to
me, And I remember I discovered it, and I had 400 or 500 or 600 subscribers piled up, and I was like, oh man, that is so. I was like, I know what I'm going to do. And back during these days, YouTube direct messages were much more popular than they are now. I don't use them at all now. I
think it's more comments now, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
exactly. It's all comments. I sat down and I took screenshots of all these people that had subscribed to me, and then I went and found each one of their individual YouTube profiles, and then I clicked send a message, and I typed a personal message
like thanking them,
each one, like, hey, I saw that you subscribed, thank you so much. I don't know the math or the stats on it now, but I have a lot of people that tell me, man, I was one of your first few. I got a message from you in 2007 that thanked me, and I've been with you since, 13 years later. That's nuts. And it was a lot of work, and I answer every message, every email, every Facebook message, everything that comes through that I see. A lot of it gets caught by the junk,
spam,
spam stuff, and I can't help those. But you know what, man? Another thing that I learned in Nashville, Vince, and this too, dude. It's like everybody's the same, and one thing that I would just get heartbroken over was folks in Nashville that thought they were too good,
better than that,
to relate to their fans, maybe, and thankfully I worked for the most part for really nice people, but I would see this transformation occur where, especially with new artists, that would go from these bubbling, glowing, super grateful folks to all of a sudden going through a transformation. We even had a term for it. We called it going to artist school. It's like, and you're playing for a new artist, you're talking to somebody, and they're like, well, have they been to artist school yet? And you're like, no, they're still cool. And then, well, it's like
graduated.
It's like somebody, you send your puppy off to training, coming back or something. All of a sudden, you jump on the bus the next weekend, they're a different person. It's like, well, they've been to artist school. Like some manager got a hold of them somewhere that told them something untrue about them, and they believed it. About how awesome they are and better they are than.
So many of those out there too.
Yeah, exactly. So I just kind of made this, and I think part of it's just how I was raised too. Just made this concerted effort that I'm going to communicate and be relatable to everybody that I possibly can.
Yeah.
I found myself that way on the road too. It's like I fit in better with the truck drivers and the riggers, and the hands, the local hands.
So me.
Then I did Taylor's backup dancers or whatever, and nothing against those people, but I just, man, I felt at home sitting in catering with guys that
just the caterers.
Yeah,
I would hang out with caterers all the time. I'd walk in, and then the next year I'd come back with a different artist. They'd be like, "Hey, are you with them now?
Yeah.
Here's your plate." You're like,
exactly.
"Oh wow," it's just talking with,
and
like you said.
And why not?
Exactly.
And so I think that served me well. going forward. I think it serves you well too. Even if you're extremely sarcastic in a lot of the communication, it still shows you, you're communicating with people and you're accessible and you're a normal dude, a really talented, normal dude.
Oh, thanks, man. We're supposed to be gloating on you right now.
Right. And that goes a long way, man. And
well, it's like I did a podcast with Georgette Jones, and we were talking about that. Like, the old school guys she was talking about how Conway and Loretta and her mom and dad would go out and sign autographs for like an hour, 2 hours and shit. And, back then I'd see the line of people and be like, oh God, when is this going to be over? And they're greeting them with open arms. And I said, but that's why they're legendary. That's, and we talked about, Tippin still does that. Mm-hmm. And he still has a quote unquote meet and greet before the show. Yeah. But then after the show, he says, come out to the merch table and I'll be signing till you all gone. Yeah. And he was telling me a story one time about how, and I won't mention any names, but he said another artist that when he was first getting up on the charts and stuff, that he went outside of his bus and just started meeting everybody and stuff. And the other artist that was with him had kind of already had a few hits and stuff, was out there. And he says, what are you doing? You can't be doing that if you're out here on the road, blah, blah. And Aaron said, well, why not? He said, because you're going to have to do that every time. And he said, well, that's kind of why I'm in this business. I like people, and then this is what I want to do. These people are buying my records, dude. I'm going to thank them. Yeah. And the other guy was like, you ain't catching me out there doing that stuff. It's like, what? And so me and Georgette were talking about how, do they not remember when they were really like, had that fire in them? Like, man, I want people to like me. I need people to buy my records. I need people to, or like nowadays, share my stuff, blah, blah. And then you're just going to shit on them?
Yeah. It becomes normal somehow.
It does. It becomes like a normal thing. Like, I ain't talking to them.
Expected, and I think that's why too, a lot of the older artists were so kind and gregarious and generous, and there have been a lot of them that transform because they probably went through a time in their career where they came to expect their popularity and they came to see that as normal. Mm-hmm. And then I always imagine, like, if you were some big hit maker and you were the thing, and you were recognized everywhere you went, what would you think the first time you walked in someplace and nobody said anything to you? Mm-hmm. The first time you went into a Golden Corral and sat down and nobody said, "Excuse me, sir, are you?"
Yeah. Can I? I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah. And you come in and you ate your chicken wings and you paid for them and nobody said your name. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably hits a lot of these artists that have been through the cycle, and then retrospectively, they look back and say, "Man, what did I have?" And so.
Why don't I have that anymore? Right. They go, why didn't anybody buy my record or follow me?
And then a lot of them become quite eager to spend time with their fans later in their career, right? Because they've seen that and they've learned.
Well, that's one thing. You talk about learning, picking up stuff from Taylor. I learned a lot from guys like Neil and guys like Daryl Worley and Tippin.
Well, you've played for the best at treating their fans.
That's true. That's very true. And I picked up a lot on that. And, there's times when I say something to somebody like, you're saying I'm sarcastic and stuff. And then they'll either get butthurt or mad or whatever. I'm like, that wasn't dang it. That wasn't my intention. But, it's like I was just being sarcastic and trying to be funny. But at the same time, like, you are asking me something I just said, So in part of me, I'm like, I didn't really want that guy upset, or whatever.
Sure,
I said,
but
the one thing I did learn from Tippin was, he always says, because people will come up, man, like security guards or whatever. Hey, man, I know that you're working. I'm not supposed to do this. He's like, you bet. Come on, get your phone out, And he told somebody one time, well, he says it all the time. He's like, when they stop asking for my picture or my signature, that's when I need to worry. Yeah. Is when they stop doing it. So until they stop doing it, I'm going to talk to every single person. And he does, man. I mean, that dude is. You cannot not get him to meet somebody. And our bus is never empty at a gig. I mean, he's either got his old friends in every town, or if that's one artist, and not, like you said, not to knock any other artists I've worked for, but a lot of them have rules for their bus and stuff. But Aaron is one guy that I've never, ever had to reluctantly tell somebody like, I don't know if I can get you on the bus or whatever. He's more like, you better bring your friends up here and get them a glass of wine, buddy. If you're working for me, and that's just how it is. And it's like, so I've never ever once even
how rare,
you shaking your boots when you go, I got to ask my road manager if I can get you into the show. I got to ask, and then you feel bad because they said no or whatever. I just I just go to Aaron and be like, hey man, 36 of my cousins are coming. He's like, oh hell yeah, well put the slide out. I mean seriously. So I've learned a lot I try to be more patient with the the questions and stuff like that. I try to be, and then there's times I'm like, I've answered this 56 times a day. Can you just please read the post, or is it that hard to click on that link that's in the post? So I try not to do that, but it does. It wears on me, and I wish that's a trait of me that I wish I could work on. That'd be better, because I know that you don't do that. I know you like I say, it's not that hard to just answer the question, which I could do. And sometimes I go, okay, I put it all there, but copy and paste. I'll just send it to you. So I'll do it, and they'll be like, hey, thanks, man. Thanks for the quick reply. We'll see you at the gig. And okay.
You know what? That was worth it.
That was worth it. They're probably going to buy a CD now or whatever. And that's not the intention.
Right.
But then I go, okay, I need to be, So I do. I try. That is a flaw of mine that I work on every day. And the button gets pushed every day. Yeah. But you know what I mean?
Well, some people, Aaron, he's just a masterful architect of those relationships, man. And I don't know him personally, but I've just never heard anything different than how you've just
everybody
described him.
Speaks highly of him.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
everybody. It's crazy.
It's kind of like Dolly. And it's like Garth.
Yeah.
I mean, that dude's superhuman with how he treats everyone as important and remembers everyone. And
well, I made a joke with Aaron one time. I said, well, if I had all the hits that you do and I had all this, I could probably be really nice to people too. But like his thing was, he never dreamt of being a 90s country legend. Right. He was like, I was born to be a pilot. Yeah. And I just fell into, hey, and he tells people I'm the luckiest hillbilly ever. I got to write hit songs and people recorded my songs and I got to make hits with them. He's like, what? Yeah. He's like, I'm the most grateful hillbilly you ever meet, So
well, one of the most talented dudes ever to walk into this town. And I say that as someone who's highly critical of talent, but that guy, he does have it. And I'm not even a huge fan of his music, but I can recognize brilliance when I see it.
He's so funny. He's so humble. The other day he was driving the bus. We were coming back from a gig. He was driving. I was up front. We had a Bluetooth speaker going, and I just started pulling up his old songs that we don't do. And I'm like, why don't we do these during the show, man? I'm like, these are so good. The people want to hear the hits. I said, you'd be surprised how many 20-year-olds want to hear. I parked my car beside the highway. The old stuff. And he's like, really? And so we started listening to stuff. He's like, oh man, I can't sing like you, blah blah. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'm like, you got a great voice. You couldn't have been on the radio and not be able to sing, But that's just his mindset. He's so humble like that. He's just like, oh hell, I can't sing. Listen to me, whatever. It's just funny, but it's just that's a quality that I think people like Taylor and the really big stars that or even some of them that aren't that big, they just have that quality to people are drawn to them. They want to be around them because they know they're going to get treated like they're not a fan. They're more like a friend, like a distant friend or something.
It would get old. I have to be honest, as part of the band, to sit around a venue till 2 or 3 a.m. constantly.
Right. And, well, I've told him that too, because I go out to the merch line and I help. I hold T-shirts for him to sign and stuff. And he's like, "You really just don't enjoy this, do you?" I said, "They're here to see you, man. If they were here to see me, I'd be loving it like you are." I said, but no. I said sometimes I don't enjoy getting spit on and or whatever, and stuff like that.
I would find ways to entertain myself. I grew up shooting slingshots a lot, and man, I had these wrist rockers. You can buy them from Walmart. The kind that has the brace to go on your wrist. And man, I started buying these jugs of paintballs.
Oh my god!
And so I would pass the time during the day at the gig because they're water soluble and they'd wash off of things. And I'd stroll around the parking lot and I'd kind of rekindled my love and my accuracy for these things. And I could hit a stop sign pole 50 yards away. Yeah, man. And so. And then one night, about 1 a.m., I got off the phone with my wife or something. I stepped off the bus and I saw this line of 3,500 little girls in white sundresses lined up to see Taylor. And I looked to my left and there was my Slingshot. And you're like, and there's my paintballs. I said,
oh no.
I'm about to have some fun. so starting that night, I started hunting these girls, and man, I could shoot that thing like 100 yards away, So I would be off in the shadows, in the bushes, and I could pick them off individually, They're just sitting there talking with their moms.
Yeah, and they clink.
I can't wait to say, wow! And there's this big red splatter on their chest, And a lot of them would have.
Oh my god!
A lot of them would have these custom T-shirts they made for Taylor,
Yeah.
I'd pick them out,
Oh yeah.
And man, I just was having a heyday, and I'd pick and move, you know. So they would point out to security, "It's came from over there." Well, I was already around the arena, like still, and so then I remember sitting down at catering, you know, the next morning we made breakfast at Taylor, and she's like, "Guys, third city in a row. I probably had 20 girls last night with paintball stains on their so there's some kind of serial shooter, you know? And I was like, no way. What are the odds, you know?
As you wiping your fingers off with the paint, well, what do you mean?
What happened was, because I would just, if I was bored in the morning, because I just got up early and I would go out inside and start shooting. And one morning I was shooting in the parking lot, and I was lighting up this, this parking lot sign, just lighting it up, pop, 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 trying to paint the whole thing red, you know. And then I hear a bus door open behind me. Ben! I turn around and it's Taylor, you know. And I'm just sitting there, just literally red-handed, you know. And,
oh my god!
And she's like, "You can't be doing that."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "It all came out. It comes out in the washing machine."
That's good.
I didn't shoot anybody in their face.
It literally all come out in the wash right there in that moment.
Yeah. So I stopped shooting her meet and greet lines then, but I kept having fun with that thing. One night we were playing Verizon. Wireless amphitheater, I don't know, it's St. Louis or someplace, Kansas City, someplace like that. We were with Flats, and I started what we'd started doing after the show. Instead of shooting personnel, I would shoot items, and it started like this wager type thing. It's like, well, I bet he can't hit this. Yeah. In the first shot, I've got 10 on that. I've got 10 that he can. Right? So we'd have these slingshot competitions. And so we went out. So we went out, and on the side of this amphitheater, they have the big, white bubble letters that are lit up that says Verizon. It's like, I don't know, 100 yards in the air.
Sure.
On top.
At least.
So we started pointing out, parts of those letters, and I was hitting them. And then, I got to the dot on the I on Verizon, and I was like, I bet I can cover up every bit of that I in 5 shots, So I'm like, I paint the whole thing, then we hear it behind us, like, hey boys, what are you doing? Turn around, and it's the sheriff and the venue security, and man, they bust us all, so they're going to press charges on me for vandalism and all this stuff. And I said,
look, it washes out, guys.
Like, it'll wash. But I mean, it was hilarious because this giant Verizon sign was splotched red, And I said, I was like, look, here's my information. If it doesn't come off in the next rain, I will pay for custom cleaning. Yeah. And so finally, Taylor's road manager, he's like, that's it, dude. Like, no more Slingshot. You can't bring it out. So that was the end of the Slingshot days. But you find all kinds of things.
You took your Slingshot away.
Yeah.
Put you in time out.
When you're out there on the road, you find all kinds of things to entertain
yourself.
Dude,
it's like most people don't realize we're out for 36 hours before we even touch an instrument.
That's right.
And most of that is just sitting around, like you said. I mean, thank God for tablets and Netflix and mobile devices that we can actually watch movies on or whatever, or kill time on social media, because back in the day, there wasn't that stuff. You're just literally sitting there looking out the window, or at a hotel room looking out, and then the show is 90 minutes,
right?
75 to 90 minutes. So you're spending, 4 days to actually do what you love to do on stage for 90 minutes out of that whole 4 days. And people don't realize that, like you said, if it wasn't for that Slingshot, you probably would have maybe took a real gun and took some people out. We'd be talking to a different person today.
We'd be talking through telephones. Oh, man.
It wouldn't be Banjo band.
No.
It'd be harmonica band from the prison cell number 44477. What all instruments do you do on your program? What do you teach?
Man, on my website I do banjo, mandolin, and guitar. And an exciting thing about next year is I'm going to be expanding that. And I'm actually in the midst of a new website build right now, which is always quite the task.
And that's always like, hey, with $10,000, I can make you a killer website.
Yeah, I wish it was 10,000. But but anyway, I'm adding.
You might be getting taken then.
Tell me about it. And
this is your Slingshot hitting you back right now.
And so I'm adding another genre of banjo playing next year. It's called clawhammer, old time banjo, and I've got an incredible teacher coming on board, banjo builder teacher named Dave Dillard. He has Nashville Banjo Company, and
very cool.
And then I plan on expanding into fiddle and then
you don't teach piano at all?
I don't, man. And do you like to teach?
Dude, I've been approached by people. I just tell them I don't know enough I can teach you what I know, but I don't know enough to tell you why I know that or why that should be played there. I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't read music. Like, I mean, you do tab and all that stuff,
I
right?
do, and of course the tab is just a means to an end to, the goal is not to have them learn your tab. The goal is to use the tab to teach them some concept or some skill that they can use on their own.
Right, but that's like I didn't have that.
Right.
I heard a note on the radio, and then I learned that, and I had a drum set up in the corner of our living room. That was one thing. Kudos to my parents. They were like, "Yeah, what do you need now? Oh, accordion? Okay."
Yep.
And my dad would go get it, or like where I grew up from a small town where there was like 3 or 4 different little bands, that play, and then one guy'd get mad at the other guy, and he'd quit and go join the other band, and then that band would be like, "Hey, well, do you play bass?"
Yeah.
And then my dad's like, "Well, we'll find out in a second, And so we'd go get a cheap old little bass with no name on it or whatever, and I'd learn it and be playing bass with that. That's how I learned how to play instruments. I was fortunate. I never had the curriculum, I should honestly take your course.
Well,
I could learn a ton, I bet.
Well, most people aren't like you in that, whether you realize it or not, you're a humble dude, but, you're extremely, extremely talented.
Yes, I am. No.
But, you're extremely talented. And most of Nashville,
See, I don't think that. It's hard for me to hear that.
Well,
when people tell me that, it's weird.
It's
guys,
weird. Well, I'm a pro musician telling you that you're one of my favorite, and I think one of the most talented musicians.
Well, that goes both ways. Total admiration on your
part. But, I always thought you were just a keys player, and then I heard you pick up a guitar, and I was like, what the heck, man? And then I heard you sing. I didn't know you sang like that.
Oh, man.
But because the first time I heard you is just in context of
the Neil McCoy gig, probably.
Yeah, Neil McCoy gig, just playing piano.
And that's funny because when I came to town, when I moved here, because when I played with Neil, I still lived in Arizona. I didn't leave. I just flew everywhere to meet the bus. And when I came to town, I remember I was playing guitar like downtown somewhere on Broadway, and somebody come in that had seen me on tours on the road with Singletary up to that point with Neil, and they were like, I didn't know you sang. Like you just say, I didn't know you played guitar. I didn't know you sang. I'm like, well, yeah. That's really all I've done my whole life before Neil and whatever. But you kind of get, it's kind of funny. You kind of get in a pigeonholed like that because if people never see you doing other stuff, they'll be like, well, I didn't know that you. And there's tons of musicians like that, side guys that play other stuff or like that's their second instrument. Is piano your first? You said you learned on that.
It is. I spend less time on it now, and I would have to spend much time get my chops back if I were ever going to go play on the road with somebody. I could do it. It would just take a while.
Right.
But yeah, that was my first instrument. But what I learned here in Nashville, especially in the bluegrass genre, is just, man, how talented folks are. And you think, yes, that's their main instrument until they pick up another one.
Right.
And you're like, oh, well, then I guess that's their main instrument. And then they pick up another one. And man, it just, it blows my mind. And I've never taught piano mainly for the fact that some of the technical issues, it's like, how do I film it exactly and talk to them? And then honestly, it's just a lack of time because every week I produce about 30 minutes of instructional content from the ground up.
Those are little things like we see on Facebook too. Those are separate clips too.
Yeah, exactly. It's all original stuff.
But you've got that down too as far as the video editing and all. You do it all yourself, right?
I do that all myself.
Yeah. That's great, that all myself. Man.
And so it's a full-time job just conceptualizing, writing, performing, recording, editing, promoting.
Yeah.
That's the job. And then you throw in a few hundred emails on top of that.
Yeah. That's it. I feel your pain, brother. And it's I honestly would rather do that. This might curse me, but I would rather do that than have to go back on a bus and I'd rather be doing my own thing like that too. Right. Which I this whole year it's kind of forced me to do it.
It's forced a lot of people.
I came to Nashville to do that.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, yeah, I'll go play with so and so. I grew up listening to them because I love their music and I've always admired them. Yeah, I'll go play with them. And then next thing you know, a year goes by. I'm like, I still didn't work on my own crap, or whatever. And then here I am 10 years later. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I want to be answering, those emails and want to be doing this stuff. Now the technical stuff, I'm terrible at, like as the video, editing and stuff like that. I'm terrible at it. And hopefully this thing is actually recording right now.
I've been watching it.
Because if it's not, guess what we're doing tomorrow? No, I'm just kidding. But you brought up a really good point, and I wanted to hit on this. Growing up in the small town of Arizona where I was from, I honestly never was introduced to bluegrass. like at all. I mean, it's not a big thing out there, you know? And like, as far as like you're saying, like these high caliber, extraordinary musicians and singers and stuff, you know, and never really, whatever we got on the radio station, the local radio station, which is, you know, probably about 300 listeners, you know, I don't know. It's a small town. That's what I was, and you know, I tell a funny story. I think I did one on a podcast where I never knew what guys looked like who were singing on the radio. So one time when Eddie Raven came to our truck stop, stopped and pulled the bus, and I walked to the bus driver and said, "Hey, are you Eddie Raven?" Because I didn't know what he looked like. You know, I didn't have the pictures. I didn't have the albums. Right. You know, we were poor. We didn't go out and buy every single album that first came out. So that's the kind of stuff that I grew up with. And then when I started coming, not to Nashville, but actually when I started touring with Neil, it got me out in the world, and I was like, holy crap. Not only did I get to see and I'm not saying the nation, I'm saying the world, because we traveled everywhere. But I got to see that high caliber, those people, like, you know, like you're saying, like Brett Mason, or like, you know, Tommy White used to come play with me from the opera. He used to come play with me at Crossroads. People like that, you go, holy cow. I was so sheltered from that when I was growing up. So people today have no idea how lucky they are to have guys like you who are on the internet, who are on Facebook, social media, everywhere, and they can access that through you. And that is so cool to me, because I would have just killed to have that when I was a kid, you know?
I'll tell you kind of a funny story. You know, I didn't grow up around bluegrass either, and really not around commercial music at all. When I play piano, I'm talking about Bach and Beethoven and such. And I came from a line of classical piano players from my mom's side, incredible musicians, but not commercial.
Oh, really?
I mean, does
that go for your sisters as well?
Initially they were exposed to commercial music and just in bluegrass by what I discovered in college. They're 7 years younger than me. So
really?
Yeah. So I would bring it home in the summers, and they would learn everything I'd learned over the last year in about 2 weeks. And
they are talented. Man.
Yeah. So, you know, when I got into started discovering bluegrass, that was something that happened around 19, 20 years of age. And then there were still no music stores around me that really carried anything like that. And you know, I didn't know really any pickers. Right. And my uncle had an old banjo and some old finger picks, and he had it in the closet. And so he said, yeah, you can have at it. And I didn't have any instructional materials or anything. And I grabbed the finger picks, and if you're not a banjo player, this won't make too much sense to you, but I tried to put them on, and I put them on backwards. But it's the way that it kind of intuitively looks like they should go on. And I would try to play this banjo, and it would pop these picks off all the time, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, how do they do this, man? It's like, I can't even play the string one time. So I've found a bluegrass festival, and I was like, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to find somebody that will tell me how to keep these picks on. So I walked in, there was this guy on the stage who was a little older, and he could play really well. And I snuck backstage, and I caught him as he was putting his banjo up, and I said, sir, how do you keep your picks on? And he's like, what? And I said, how do you keep your picks on? I was like, whenever I try to play, they come off. And I pulled them out, and I was trying to put them on. And he says, let me have your hand, son. And he grabbed my hand, and I'm 20 years old.
I know where this is going.
20 years old. And he spun those picks around. And I looked at him, you know, in bewilderment. And
you're like,
I'm like, are you kidding? And he goes, no. He says, go try that, kiddo, and see how it works. Well,
so you had the pick on top of your fingernail?
Yeah, exactly. I had them spun completely around, you know. Well, I find out when I leave there who I had talked to, and it still didn't weigh on me until years later as I became more educated in the bluegrass genre. But that guy's name was J.D. Crowe.
Oh my God!
Who is one of the top 3 bluegrass innovators of all time? You know? And I was just horrified that as a 20-year-old grown man, I asked JD how to put your picks, how he kept his picks on, you know? And so anyway, that always kind of haunted me in the back of my mind. And so we're, you know, years later,
so you were being one of those people that ask us what time we're playing.
Yeah, exactly.
He posted.
Yeah, exactly. And so, man, you know, 8-10 years later, you know, I'd gone through life. I'd finished college. I went out to that little music college, moved to Nashville, and we're playing with Taylor. We're playing the Stagecoach Festival out in California. Super eclectic festival. It's huge, but every genre of music you can imagine. And they put all the artists up in this one hotel. And so I'm walking through this huge hotel lobby, and I look across the lobby, and who's coming toward me but J.D. Crowe and his band. And I was like, oh, man.
You had to tell him that story, though.
Oh, so anyway, yeah, I stopped him, and I said, Mr. Crowe, I said, my name is Ben Clark. I said, about 10 years ago, I met you in Overton, Texas, and I asked you if I had my picks. And he goes, you had your picks on backwards.
That's awesome.
He turns on his band, he like elbows me, he's like, this guy had his picks on backwards. And I'm like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Okay, well, I learned how to do it now.
Yeah, and so
that's
anyway,
amazing.
so he says, well, what are you doing out here?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm 2,000 miles away from there.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm playing banjo for Taylor Swift. And he turned around his band, and he goes, it worked. It worked. It worked. I'm like, yeah, man.
You're welcome. He just said, you're welcome, kid. Yeah. That is so funny.
But, you know, all that to say, man, it's like, and that could take us in a whole other direction. Wow. And, you know, don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Even I'm kind of afraid to ask you questions on your Facebook page. But
listen here, kid.
Yeah. But I shouldn't be. You know, it's like, and I guess advice for those folks out there that are maybe thinking about trying to come to town and do what you've done. You know, and try to make a living out of this music thing. Yeah. And I would just encourage people to try it. Yeah. You know, and try it with all their might.
Or not even if it's music, to whatever you might be dreaming of thinking of doing.
And my other big piece of advice, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to give it anyway, is...
Let me just turn this mic on. Okay, what now?
is to, just try to humble yourself.
Yeah.
I have another kind of funny story in that vein, but it was one of the dumbest and smartest things I've ever done in my life. You know, I told you I grew up a piano player, but I didn't grow up playing those gospel licks. I didn't grow up playing the
Ronnie
Pigs.
Millsap stuff that you're probably a fan
Pigs,
of.
None of that stuff. I was introduced to that at the same time that I was learning banjo in college so I had, one advantage I had was I had the chops. I had the dexterity. I had the piano keyboard,
the knowledge of it.
I knew what it felt like. I had the theory. I could play all the Bach 2-part inventions, but I couldn't kick off, Grand Tour.
Grand Tour,
which, by the way, I did that for George one time. And that was we played his birthday party, and I played that on piano, with him sitting there, and I was nervous. But anyway, so I got the Craig gig, and that was my first piano gig in town. Yeah.
Doing that kind of commercial stuff.
Exactly, man. And so I didn't know anything. I'd never really learned piano by ear that much. I had a good ear because I was playing for people, playing bluegrass and all this stuff. And but there's a lot of piano parts that I couldn't hear. And I was like, man, I really want to do this right. And I didn't really know any piano players at the time. I hadn't been in town just too terribly long. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to look at the album and see who played this, And so I looked on the record, and it was some guy they called Moose.
Jim, yeah.
Jim, yeah. And so I thought, well, how can I get a hold of this guy? This was before iPhones and such. I went down to the Musicians Union, and I think maybe even joined just so I could get a directory.
Oh, yeah. Because they have everybody's numbers.
Yeah,
and stuff,
exactly. Yeah. And so I called him up at home. And I said, "Is this Moose?" He goes, "Yeah." "Who's this?" I said, "Man, my name's Ben Clark." I said, "I've got kind of an odd request, maybe." And I said, "I just got this gig playing piano for Craig Morgan. My first gig's in Hawaii. I'm not going to get a chance to."
Was that your first gig?
Yeah,
that's the first.
That's the first
gig
I
met you on.
Yep, that was
Holy
it.
crap!
That was it, dude. We were out there with y'all.
It was like a week of like 5 shows on each island or whatever.
Wasn't that so fun?
That
dude?
Was fun.
So that was my first gig.
I didn't know that was your first weekend with them.
So I only had like
you didn't play it like it was, son. You nailed it, man.
Well, thank you, man. But it was, this was like a week or two before that.
Wow.
And I said, I've got Craig's albums here. I see that you played on them. I was like, could you show me some of the things that you're doing on here?
Wow.
And he just kind of sat there in silence. And he says, son, I've been in this town for however many years it was, 30 years, whatever. He says, I've never had anybody ask me this. And he says, but yeah, here's my address.
Wow.
So I drove up to Moose's house, and we sat in his studio. And this guy's, he's... Yeah, you talk about songwriter, guitar player, singer. Yeah,
pretty legendary too. Yeah.
Legendary, hit writer, hit producer.
Funny dude too.
Yeah, hilarious. And man, we sat there at his piano for 2 or 3 hours going through these songs. And of course, he can't remember what all he played.
Yeah, he's like, I don't remember what I played on that thing.
Exactly. And I'd worked on it pretty hard, and I was like, I would be like, all I was looking for is validation. I'd worked it out, and I'd be like, I think you're doing something kind of like this. He goes, yeah, that was it.
Oh, okay.
But maybe I did this, so I was recording all those things in my mind, like,
Yeah.
okay, there's options, and Moose gave me just this crash course in Nashville piano playing.
Dang.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's really cool.
And he told me that day, and I've messaged him on Facebook since and said, hey, just want to, do you remember me? Thank you again.
Yeah.
And he goes, and he's told me, he says, nobody had ever done that. And he goes, and why didn't I think of doing that when I moved to town? Of just finding the guys that had done it on the record and be like,
oh yeah, I never did it. I never thought they'd give me a time of day.
Exactly. And maybe most guys wouldn't.
Yeah.
Moose did.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again, thanks, Moose, for doing that.
I need to do a podcast with him too.
Because that's,
he'd probably tell you that story about you.
He probably would.
I mean, because that's like you said, so different.
That started me in the business, So,
wow.
So him and several other guys that were really, really generous with their time. And one of the Opry staff piano players named Tim.
Oh yeah.
He did the same thing. He came over to my house and showed me some stuff. But all that to say, just my advice to folks out there is, can you humble yourself enough to realize that you don't know everything and that there's things to be taught.
Yeah.
You
don't have to be the know-it-all.
You don't have to. You got to have that self-confidence to be able to walk into a room and give it your best shot. But at the same time, you've got to walk in humility and be prepared to learn. And you'll also see if you carry that kind of attitude into a room, you'll be surprised at how many successful people want to help you. If they see that you're a hard worker, and they see that you're eager to learn and that you're respectful.
Yeah, that's what say, just not a butthole.
Exactly, and you recognize your place in that room and in that relationship. And man, I've just always told people, and you can testify to this. It's like you've already mentioned it. On the road 4 days, play on stage 90 minutes.
Yeah.
What are you doing the rest of that time? You're having to live on a 40-foot tube with a bunch of other dudes.
Yep.
You're having to show up on time. You're having to not get in trouble with the law while you're on the road.
Oh, Slingshot Clark.
yeah. But this town is filled with people who can do that 90-minute show.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's 1,000 guys literally waiting that could jump on that bus and could play those same exact notes just as good as you.
Yep.
What gets you jobs is the other 98% of the time that you're having to maintain relationship,
yes,
that you're having to be responsible, that you're having to do what you said you were going to do, that you have to not do things that you promised you wouldn't do again.
Yeah.
All of those things, that's what keeps you working. And I don't think that's just the music business. That's everything. And it seems so hard for a lot of people to grasp. To me, it was common sense. I think part of it was I knew how under-talented I was compared to the other talent in this town.
Right.
And doggone, I was going to do everything else better than them. If I couldn't play as good as them, I was going to show up better than them.
Yeah.
I was going to hustle merch better than them. I was going to...
Well, you did merch for Taylor too, right? Yeah, I remember that.
Didn't get paid for it.
Right.
But
you just did
what?
it. Yeah.
You know what my goal was? Literally, my goal was she will find it impossible to let me go. Because if she lets me go, she's going to have to hire 3 people.
Right.
And
that's smart, man.
I wanted her accountants and her business managers and her manager and her road managers to say, we can't get rid of Ben.
Right.
If we do that, we'll have to pay 3 times.
We just lost our slingshot driver.
Our slingshot shooter that slung T-shirts till 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Just like you're doing,
Yeah.
And
well, that's like I tell people all the time when they call me and say, hey, you think you can learn this stuff? I'm like, I don't know, but I can ride a bus really well.
That's right.
And they know what that means. They know that I can get on the bus and not cause any drama or whatever. They're going to have fun. They're probably going to laugh most of the time that we're up, and we don't have to drink, but if you want to drink, we can do it and responsibly and not get too drunk for the show or whatever, and it's just like a lot of little things like that, like you're saying, behind the scenes that's what keeps your gig.
Absolutely.
And most artists, they're going to expect you to screw up a note here and there or whatever. And if you do, they either want to correct it or they go, next time get it right, whatever. Like Aaron, he's like, hell, I make more mistakes than y'all do, whatever. So in that aspect, but you still want to play right, you still want to do your job correctly, but it's that other 24 hours of the day that gets you either that or it gets you more gigs, or because people will be like, well, he's an okay player, he'll get the job done, but man, he's fun to be around, or you're not going to get any trouble out of him, or and that really goes a long way, is like you're saying, because Dude, I can't play guitar like some guys are out there can.
Or we'll play the licks that you need to play.
Right.
Yeah. So, I know this isn't necessarily an advice podcast, but when I talk to people that move to town, it's one of the things I learned when I moved here. It's not the notes you play; it's the ones you don't.
Yeah.
It's like learn to not play the wrong notes.
Yeah.
And not play too many notes.
Yeah.
And then show up on time. And make yourself marketable. And if you do that, and with a little grace, man, you'll make a living here.
Sure.
Under normal conditions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I was always amazed. A lot of the hottest pickers in town don't work as much as guys like me, because they couldn't get the other things down.
Right. Or they had a drinking problem.
Yeah.
Or, they he didn't make it to the show, or bus call. He's always late an hour at a bus call, or it's just like all these little things. That's so true, man. And no, it's good advice to give to people, because a lot of people that listen, the 13 people that listen to this podcast, there's 12 of them that probably want to do it.
I'm going to bring in another 6 or 8. So we're going to be up close to 20.
There you go. But it's funny because, and here's the one thing too that, I think that has gotten me a lot of my gigs is I'm a front man. Mm-hmm. So I also understand what's important to a front man to have in a side man.
Yep.
And I've actually had a couple of artists say that to me. They're like, you get it because you're normally where I'm standing. So not to, and I'm going to throw some people under the bus here, because I just did it live with my buddy Dave. And the whole time I was trying to promote my CDs or talk, he's plinking and just noodling. And I was joked it off, but at the same time I wanted to wring his neck, because when you're doing a show and you're trying to talk to the fans or talk to the people, that's the whole reason you're on there, is to communicate with your people.
Yep.
And when you got somebody going plink a ding ding, or the guy on the cymbal going ding ding ding, or just be quiet.
Yeah.
You don't need to chime in on the microphone. You don't need to yell over the microphone over the artist. Yeah. Stuff like that. It's like, yeah, they want you to be part of the fun. They want you to be part of the show, but you got to respect the fact that there's a front man for a reason, and you're a side man for a reason, and it's not degrading or anything.
Right.
But that is one of the qualities that people look for, as well as trying to get like road gigs like you and I've had. They want that. You need to be alert of that. You need to be aware of those little things like that, because artists realize that stuff. And I'm not saying I'm a huge artist, but it is frustrating when I go, hey folks, don't forget that we're trying to, and then it's like, okay, I'll go ahead and wait till you're done. Everybody look at him so they can see him tuning. It's like, stop. But it is. That should be good advice to somebody, because and a lot
that
of
translates to other pursuits as well. It's not just music.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. You can't have a carpenter.
It's all part of the humility too.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
No, it's true. Yeah,
learning your place and abiding your time.
Yeah. And if you want to be a front man, then do it.
Then go do it.
But then you'll go, and it's the same thing goes for bus drivers. Like, some of the best bus drivers I've ever had have ridden in the back of it.
Yes.
And some of the worst ones have never.
Yep.
So you know what I mean. So some of the best bus drivers are musicians, because I know what it feels like to be back there slung around.
Yep.
So it's kind of the same thing.
It's funny. Whenever I quit Taylor and I started writing for Sony, I got paid a cool $1,000 a month, and. I had to make a living somehow, and I wanted to do the teaching thing, and I was starting to ramp that up. But I was a bus driver, and I had probably more fun in that year, 18 months there of driving the bus for a lot of my friends. I can't remember if I ever come out and drove the bus for you any after that.
I want to say that you did for somebody for like one time, and I was like, showed up and I was like, what are you doing?
I did a bunch of one-offs, but Diffie would call me a lot.
Oh yeah,
we were friends, and but part of that was part of the reason why I get those calls is because like you said, I'd ridden in a bunk many miles.
Yeah.
And
they go, he knows how to ride a.
Yeah, man, I had some fun doing that too. Winona and gosh, man, just all kinds of.
Because you get to hang with those guys. Because a lot of them will come up to the front and then ride in the jump seat, and you get to visit with them. And you know how many podcasts I've missed from the jump seat of a bus?
Oh my goodness.
You know what I mean? Because there's so many cool conversations that happen with either the artist comes up and sit with you, or the driver. The drivers. Oh my God! And that was my whole intention when I started this podcast. It was Music and Memories. It was interviewing musicians, singers, tech guys, behind the scene bus drivers, everybody. This Corona thing has pretty much stopped, doing that, because that's why I have this portable setup. So we could go to the hotel room, jump on the bus and be like, hey, let's do a podcast. And we're like, what is it? Well, it's just telling stories, basically, because for what I'm finding out is people that listen to them, they're like, that's incredible. We never knew that about so-and-so. Or like, oh, is that really how it is? Or, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's just cool to be able to, like you and I, reflect on this stuff, because it feels like we're a couple of old timers that we've done so much stuff now. And in your, so you're concentrating on your teaching and stuff like that. Is there anything that you just didn't do that you were like, man, I still want to try and get this done? Is there something that you still aspire to?
That's a great question. And I don't want this answer to sound pompous at all, but I had my fill.
Yeah.
I really did.
No, that doesn't sound at all.
One of the reasons why I was able to walk away from Taylor in that gig, well, let me just preface it by saying this. It seems that nobody in their right mind would have walked away from a Taylor Swift gig.
Mm-hmm.
She was the number one selling artist in the world, and her band was treated as royalty, and it wasn't a lot of work, and it was a whole bunch of TV and movies and glamorous stuff in jets and police escorts and all that stuff. It was what everyone, or a lot of kids like myself dreamed of maybe being possible when you came to town. And I always wondered, what would it be like to be a musical guest on Saturday Night Live? Well, I did it. Or what would it be like to play Times Square? Well, I did it.
Right.
And and to be honest, I expected, Vince, those things to pay me more of a reward than they did.
Wow.
And I found myself, when I got finished with those things, being kind of just woefully,
what next?
Woefully underwhelmed. And that sounds really bad. That's like,
it might to the general people, but I totally get that.
The 18 to 20-year-old myself that was trying to get a gig playing at the Dixie Chicken back porch would be like, you're crazy, dude, for saying that. But
right.
My point in that is this. My point in that is that everybody values different things. And I've found over the years what's most valuable to me. And what's most valuable to me is ended up being family and friends and relationship and investing in other people. And though those experiences that I had with Taylor, they're priceless to me. I'm so thankful for them. But one of the reasons why I'm so thankful is that I was able to learn that those things didn't hold my ultimate joy.
Right.
Okay. Because I think if I would not have experienced those, then right now I'd be saying, man, if I could just go and do this.
Exactly.
Then,
I was going to say that experience shaped you a little bit too.
It did.
Yeah.
It made me, I was getting ready to go play New Year's Eve with Taylor in Times Square. I mean, right before the ball dropped, 1.5 million people. I mean, the gig itself does not get any bigger than that, right? Yeah. And I remember being bummed to even jump on the plane and to go do that.
Because you're leaving your family.
Dude, it was Christmas time. It was New Year's Eve. And I'm leaving my new wife, and like, then I felt guilty. I was like, I'm going to go play Dick Clark's New Year's Eve celebration, with Ryan Seacrest and in Times Square with millions of people. What am I talking about? But I got done with that gig, and it was just like 30 minutes before the ball dropped or whatever. And we went back up to the MTV studios overlooking Times Square, and I looked around at the gang and I said, guys, I'm out. I'm going to the hotel room. And I walked to my hotel room, and as I'm hearing the countdown in the background, and I call Hannah. And she's like, how'd it go? Or, I watched you on TV or whatever. And I said, I'm done.
Wow.
I'm done.
Just hit you.
Yeah, it did, man. It was like, and what it was, Vince, was that I expected if anything was going to give me that fulfillment that I was looking for, it was going to be that gig. It was going to be that.
Yeah,
night.
I was going to say, if it wasn't that one.
What else? Do I have to go to Mars? It was like, it was a gift from the Lord to give me the biggest opportunity out there to show me
that insight.
This isn't going to keep you going, man.
Not your fulfillment.
There's something else, right?
Yeah.
There's something else that to the rest of the world's not bigger, but to you and your family is
man, that's
more
hitting
important.
home to me right now.
It's
so
really
much,
important,
dude.
right? So I went back to the hotel room, and I hung up with Hannah. And what I did, I didn't turn on MTV. I didn't turn on the live Times Square stuff. I opened up that MacBook. And I hit the red button. And I said, folks, I've been working on this little bluegrass picking song called Cherokee Shuffle. I want to show you how to play it.
Wow.
And that video now has close to 1 million views in that hotel room on that New Year's Eve. And I just look back at how that was divinely woven, that path.
Yeah.
And that, and just that, comparison there, that not, that very same night I experienced the biggest gig that you could experience. And then also, the most, smallest thing I could do and open up a laptop and record a song.
Yeah.
And it was like I just had this direction change happen in that hotel room, and I knew it deep down.
That's
and
crazy.
I still had no idea what that teaching was going to do for me down the road.
Well, you never do at that point. You don't know. But there's confirmation.
Right, man. But I found and I learned that we should pursue the things that give us the most joy and has the most value, and that value is not communicated in currency a lot of times, and communicated in
so
fame.
true. And you know how you can also validate it because there's times where you didn't have any money.
Yeah.
There's times where you're struggling, but it's like, but I hadn't, my wife, my kids right there. So, hey, that's better than, being alone and being successful. Cause I mean, you see the whole cliches about, like, oh, the guy's a superstar, but he's miserable because he's lonely at the top. It's like in Pure Country where George Strait says, that dancing chicken, I felt like a dancing chicken. Or in the movie Rockstar, he's like, I just, he had to go pee. Was one of the line of the movie because he just got tired of all the, the success. And that's not where he was happy at. So, and that really hits home for me too, because there's a lot of times, especially this last year, where I see my kids are, starting college and stuff like that. And I look at them a lot of times, and they don't know this, that when they're walking out the door, I look at them and I think, how much little things that I just miss by being out there doing my dream. And I think my dream, I'm waking up from it because, like you said, it's not fulfilling me for what I am, So there's a lot of, I wouldn't say regret, but there is, because I mean, that's what I always wanted to be, was a dad first off. I didn't, I always wanted to be a singer, but I always wanted to be a dad, and that's what makes me the most, full, filled. And it's so weird because now I go like this year, they're like, well, we had a gig come in. I think it actually might happen. And I'm going, cool. I'm like, great. I can't wait to leave my house for 3 days and miss another weekend with my family. And I don't want to sound, ungrateful at all, because I am. And Aaron knows this, right. I'm like, man, I said sometimes, and he's at the point too, he, on his 25th year CD that he did a few years back, he has a song called On This Side of Life. And it's like, hey, I'm going to take time to drink some more wine. I'm going to take some time with my family, on this side of life. And it's so true. So he's at the same point. We used to go walk every day around the venue. So like getting our steps, and we were doing that real hard one year. And he's like, man, I look back and I wouldn't give anything, the only thing I would give up with all my success is the time that I missed with my boys, because dang, and I said, I guess there's, every job has its downside to it, but man, you're getting to do it all right here at your house. And that's, I'm jealous, man.
Well,
I'm jealous of you.
Man, I'm a blessed dude. And I was thinking, we just started homeschooling our kids this year because their school got blown away by the tornado.
Oh yeah.
They went to DCA and it is no more.
Isn't that right? Well, they could go. There just wouldn't be any roof on it. I mean, a couple walls missing.
But I thought about that. I was, I had a couple doors closed between my little studio there and where they were going to school with my wife Hannah teaching. I thought, man, what a blessed dude I am. I'm sitting here, churning away, making a living, and I got my family next door going to school, and that's never happened in my life. And honestly, that hasn't happened hardly any throughout all of history. So even in this dark time that we're in, one thing I'm really thankful of is just how it's shown a spotlight on what really matters.
Oh yeah,
right?
Big time.
A lot of people have had to hit time out and then done true introspection and just a true audit of what matters.
Well, it's funny, really matters. When you say that, because right in the prime of like right after me and my wife had COVID, and then it was like right about then at the end of March, it was like beginning of April, people were out kayaking and camping, and all these guys that I normally see on the road posting that they're playing every freaking night or whatever. It's like, I told my wife, I said, we were coming out of being sick, and I said, I see all these guys and they're living life more than they probably ever have in the last 10 years. And I said, so other than, our income wiped out from us, I said, this is going to give people a chance. And it's, It's funny you say that because I said that to my wife. I said, this is going to give people a chance to take a break and a breather. And because I said, that's what we're going to do. We're going on the lake when we feel up to it. You know, we're going to go out every day and enjoy ourselves, you know, as a family. And we have, man. And thanks to you and your wife, too, because I remember you guys brought groceries over to us when we were sick and all that stuff. Problem. Yeah, we returned it all. It wasn't anything we ate, but it was great.
They actually gave us cash back. It was amazing. Who would have thought?
Well, you got points on your Kroger card. No, man. Man, there's so much more we could talk about, but I just wanted to enlighten people to
well, thanks, man.
Your gift because and I know you're a man of the Lord too. Aren't you kind of a preacher too?
I am kind of a preacher
because I know that you go on a lot of trips overseas and stuff. I've seen you do some stuff.
I've been to Cuba many times. I've got some dear friends down there. I love going down there and spending time with them, and I love other people groups, and I love other cultures. I love experiencing it.
Sure.
And one thing that the music thing has allowed me to do is to see outside of my four walls. Yeah. And to see that, like I'm kind of alluded to earlier, that people look different than me and they're great people.
Right.
And they're valuable.
If just everybody could get the experience we do. But I mean, I'm being serious at this point. If people who are so small-minded, you know, like racism, stuff like that, if they could experience what we did, they'd probably go, I just hate that person because I've never experienced what their lifestyle is. And then you go, oh, wait a minute, I kind of like their food. I kind of like the way they treat me. You know, it's like, stop being ignorant, you know? So,
exactly. Man, I don't have the quote right on my tongue, but I can't remember who said it. As one of those really smart dudes, but essentially, you know, travel is the antidote to racism and hate because it just opens your eyes to the existence of other people who are just as valuable and just as hardworking and just as family loving and all those things that you might pride yourself in.
You nailed it on the head because most people who are small-minded like that have never left their county.
Haven't gotten out.
They have never left. It's like it's crazy. It's crazy. But I dealt with more racism being Hispanic and American Indian in Arizona. In Arizona than I ever have in Tennessee. Is that not nuts? Yeah. It's crazy. Other than the homeless guy that I was telling you about was yelling out, Mexican.
And me before I knew you. I don't know if you remember that, but no,
I don't know. No, I don't think. But man, it's just such an honor to sit down with you, dude. And hear. I mean, I learned a lot about you today that I didn't know about. Like, now I'm not ever going to call you Banjo Ben again. It's Slingshot Clark now.
Slingshot Clark.
Oh, Slingshots! I got a little banjo song here for you.
Oh man. Oh gosh! Well,
so we encourage.
I want to get with you again because we do have a lot to talk about.
Oh, there's got to be there's a part 2 in there for sure.
100 different directions we can go. But again, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with you. And man, I'm honored that you called me. I was somewhat surprised.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Well, dude, I just I try to plan these things, and then like the other day, I think I had bailed on you the first time, and I'm like, I hate doing that because people are like, well, you called me to do it, and I don't remember why I couldn't make it at this point, but I had to bail on somebody yesterday because my sugars were really bad the night before, and I didn't get any sleep, and I woke up and I said, man, is there any way we can do it later? Because I had another one set, to record, and he said, no, we'll reschedule, no problem. I said, man, I'm so sorry. I hate to do that to somebody I'm asking to do me a favor, right. So I'm so glad that you didn't hold that against me. But like I said, I see your little clips on Facebook all the time, and I sit there and watch them. Most I go scroll by, and you're so good at it's kind of hard for me, and I've been doing this for a couple of years now on Facebook Live. I started doing them way before COVID hit. I was doing them for Venmo and PayPal a long time before that, and it was so weird to go, hey man, I'm having a good time, and you're singing into a tablet.
I know, dude.
And I'm in my kitchen, and so but you do it so good that it's almost like when I'm watching you, I'm going, oh, he's got a crowd of people in there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a group of people he's talking to, because that is a gift to be able to portray yourself like that to a camera. I mean, and your little video clips are, you're like, you did one the other day. Oh crap, what was the one? I'm trying to think of the name. Tex Critter. Yeah, and I'm just laughing and going, I got to call Ben. I said, he's got to be on my podcast. And I was like, I don't know, I didn't think of it before, but it's just a scheduling thing and all that stuff. But I'm so glad that you were a guest today, man.
Part of that stuff I do is just, it's kind of like shooting the slingshot at 16-year-old girls. I've got to find a way to entertain myself
Sure.
when I'm by myself for long periods of time. And
Yeah.
some of those, sometimes I create characters and
Yeah.
do silly
Oh, it's
videos.
funny, man. So if you're not on if you're on Facebook and you're
Banjo
not
Ben.
on, Banjo Ben, is it just
Instagram, you can just type in Banjo Ben. I'll pop up.
Yeah.
There's one other
just
guy.
look for the red hair?
Yeah, just look for the red hair and maybe a wig, chest hair wig or something.
A banjo.
Yeah,
At least
banjo.
there's a banjo for
Yeah.
sure.
But man, love you, brother. And I hate that I don't see you out there on the road anymore because I know we had a lot of good times.
I'd rather do this.
But
I'd rather
do
hang
this.
out.
I was just gonna say, I'd rather
rather
and we need to go jerk the lips out of a large mouth.
Let's do
before
it.
Too long.
Yeah. Well, it's getting ready to be time to do that and gut a deer and
I know it.
all kinds of stuff. That's probably get along so good because we're outdoorsy people too.
Well, I got woods right back yonder
And a lake
I'm
nearby.
blind.
Yeah. Well, son, I'll just bring a cot and just stay over here. I'll tell you what. Ben, thanks so much for doing it, man. And that's banjobenclark.com
Yeah, Banjo Ben Clark.
for the lessons, or just check out what we've been talking. What I've been talking about the clips. I got to go now. I've got to go bang a hole in one of the walls here in his hillbilly mansion over here. So
We just repainted right before you came in anticipation.
oh yeah, great. It's like Vince is coming over. Oh well, let's go ahead and what do we want to decorate now? I think I want a new kitchen. Well, I could take care of that, I'll tell you. Folks, thanks again for joining us on Music and Memories of this episode with Banjo Ben Clark. And like I said at the beginning, please go share it. Please share it with your friends. We're just trying to get the word out, just trying to share these stories with people. I know that people enjoy it. So we appreciate you guys listening all the way through. And thanks again for Banjo Ben for taking time to hit it with me here on Music and Memories with Vince Moreno.
Thanks for joining us for the latest installment of Music and Memories with your host, Vince Moreno. Visit vincemoreno.net for show dates, music, and more.